Hello everyone, so I originally had a different video, but I didn't really like the way that I filmed it, so I'm going to just film that completely differently in a different time. But what I did have in mind for this video is actually something that I've had a few people ask, and I was like, oh, this makes it good content because this was something I was thinking of myself when I was in college, is which one would actually make it a better entry-level role, tech or consulting? And personally for me, that was like a dilemma I had myself. Should I go straight to tech and basically try it all out, or should I go into consulting and try it out through that? And as you can probably tell from my experience, I started with consulting first. And it wasn't because it was the offer that came first. It actually ended up being, the offer that came first. So if you want to check out the video here, it was on like my process of getting the job, and it was as early as September, October-ish of the senior year. So however, if I had the chance, like let's say if I were to choose between a tech job and a consulting job, and maybe I got offers from both, that might be a different story. I'm not so sure, but I'm going to talk to you if you are in that same boat of like, I'm interested in tech consulting because I'm interested in tech, but I also like what consulting offers. So you're probably stuck in that dilemma. Just keep watching. So the first thing that I want to say is like why tech and then why consulting, and then my thoughts in between those two after that. Specifically, why tech for me is tech is actually a really cool place to be, where you can see how it's like to be in a really cool organization where so many things are changing. There's many different organizations, different types of organizations, different types of technology. It's constantly changing with what like the forecast of, let's say, the government, the laws, the policies, but at the same time with the economy or maybe even certain industries, because tech is not just like a whole industry of its own. It touches all industries. So I find it really interesting because with the particular time period we're in right now, tech is literally everywhere. You can be in law, you can be in education, you could be in healthcare, or you could be in retail, or you could be in literally anything possible. Tech is there. So I think it's a really cool place to be because you get to see how everything intertwines, and sometimes there's cool solutions that you don't even know that are out there. Healthcare, there's not that many ways you can like innovate it. Retail, there's not many ways you can innovate it without involving technology. So it's a really cool place to be, to just kind of hear about all the things, put your ear against the floor and see everything that's happening and even be part of it as well. So I think it's a fast growing area, and it's a really cool place to be right out of college because you get to see how it's like, and you also even get to see the like opportunities before they even become opportunities. For me, that was like the appeal of technology. It was like, oh, we know what technology is, but I would love to be behind that, like actually be able to drive that change, drive that innovation, and be able to say like, oh, I innovated the car industry, or I innovated the way that people hire cat sitters or pet sitters or dog sitters and all that. It's a really cool place to be. However, there are ways that like I think would be an issue, and I'm going to go into that later on. So for me, I personally thought tech would be really cool for that exact reason. Like you can get experiences all across the boards. There's many different roles out there beyond the traditional roles that people know. They're not just like marketing roles, finance roles. There's so many other roles out there now. Like software engineer is like a somewhat new role. Everyone has had like an engineer role when you're building a bridge. But when you're building software or building hardware, that's still kind of new. That's like 20, 30, I don't know the history, but it's like pretty relatively new compared to like building a bridge, which everywhere has, or building a building, or building some kind of engine for the cars. Like that's so much older. But if you really see the word technology is essentially like literally everything that builds stuff, like the only difference is this is information technology. So what I liked about being in technology, now that I've been in both, is that I actually get to exactly what I just said. But not only that, I actually thought it was cool because there's so many little roles that you wouldn't have really known about. So, for example, product operations manager. I did not know what that role was. If I was talking about retail, it's pretty obvious. You got the cashier, you got inventory, you've got maybe people that work in storage or night shift, and then you have the manager. Very simple when it comes to the store. You also have healthcare. There's doctors, there's nurses. Like the structure is very simple. You have an idea like what everyone's role is. With technology, it's kind of all over the place because things change all the time. Product operations manager, what could that possibly be? I don't know. I'm actually doing a one-on-one with one of them anyways, and it's really cool to see how you can kind of pull up a role out of thin air if you find value in it. And in some ways, actually, I did find value in that as well. So that's one of the cool things about technology, is that you can find somewhere that you can fit in. So if it's like, maybe you want something where you work with clients, but you also want to work with technology, which clearly I am in that role right now. Or maybe you want to be more on the product base, but you want to be working with engineers. There's roles like that. Or maybe you just want to work with like actual users, and there's like a role like that called user experience. So, or user research. There's so many roles out there. So really, depending on what you want, there's something for you. I think the hard part though is that because everyone wants to go into technology, it's like the cool thing that's out there, and it's well compensated, and you have like the glamour sometimes, and you have like the perks of it sometimes, that like everyone wants to go. So there's more competition. But would I say, is this the best place to start in your career? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. So now I'm going to move on to consulting. I personally think consulting is really cool because you get to explore all of these different industries and projects if you're in like an entry-level development program of some sort, or you have the opportunity to try different projects. You get to try different roles without being locked into a job. So that's the one appeal that I had with consulting, was that maybe I don't want to be like a product manager, or maybe I didn't want to be like a project manager. I can do different projects, different roles, where I get to actually do exactly just that and see what I liked. And then from there, while I'm doing that, figure out what industries I liked, how I work with different people. And you're also always come in from like an underdog kind of perspective, but at the same time, not really. Underdog is in like the client will not be that happy with you sometimes, and you always have to kind of use your influence or stakeholder management to make sure that you really move the project towards the way it's supposed to be. But at the same time, you are the subject matter expert of whatever you're trying to consult in. Some like for example, Workday, like, you know, you all start somewhere. But for me particularly, that was a really cool environment to be in because you really stretch your soft skills there. And it's much harder to actually hide your incompetency or hide your slacking off in some ways, because everyone is responsible for something specific and your role is very well defined. There might be times, however, where you'll have like a role where you're taking over someone's role, but everyone's role, there's like a direct impact to what you're doing because you have an SOW, a statement of work, saying this is exactly what you're doing, and then this is exactly what the team's doing, and this is who this person's doing. Like literally in the SOW, you have names on there. Unless it's a huge project, then probably not. But my name is actually on there for some of them. I thought that was really cool that I have direct ownership into a project and I can see actual impact follow through. That was the one thing I really enjoyed about consulting from my experience. Now I've been in consulting, that I can actually see that I owned a piece of a project and I saw something through the end. With technology, on the other hand, now we're going into the part, what do I think about between the two of them? It's harder to do that because you have like either a big organization where things change a lot. Maybe the project you're working on just got scrapped and now you're gone. With at least in consulting, you sign an SOW, the client has actually bought in to the idea because they literally paid this contract. In technology, it could be as simple as like, oh, priorities change, boom, gone. Or maybe like, oh, this director doesn't like it, gone. Or maybe the VP or the CEO or like even shareholders like, this is not a good idea, gone. Things just change so quickly like that. Not to say that consulting doesn't change, but with technology, I feel like it's harder to have that ownership. And in some ways, that's why I feel, and you're going to hear this a lot if you speak to consultants, that consultants, like the number of years you spent in consulting is more like multiplied with the number of years in industry, because you're working in a very fast-paced, short-term, and you're working directly with the client on whatever you're working on. There's no ramp-up time of some sort. And all of that, you're literally in the project right at the get-go. With technology, there's still like 3 months of training, and then you're only on that one role, and even so, you're working with a team, and specifically, there's always a team working on everything that you're doing. So there are ways where other people could pick up your slack, or other people can help you. With consulting, it's kind of like, let's say I'm trying to teach you how to swim. I'm throwing you into the pool. With technology, there's like literally a whole team that's holding your hands. Not all the time is it like that. Like in a startup, it's not really like that sometimes because you don't always have a team. Maybe you are the team, like you are the entire team. In some ways, you're very similar to consulting because they need your role. Like, that's the whole reason why they hired you in the first place. And in this case, you are the team. While in consulting, like, you are the team that makes it happen. In technology, sometimes, like, you are the only reason why this project is going to work, because they really are bootstrapped. So that's like what I would say, is that in some ways, depending on how you see it, technology is like a really glamorous part to go. Think about like all the videos and the movies and the shows about that. Like, ooh, you get a pool table, you get free food, you have free swag, you get to wear a t-shirt at work, maybe even PJs in some places. Don't do that. But it's just like, it sounds cool. It sounds like where everyone wants to go. You have, like, you could bring your dog to work and you get paid well. But on your career trajectory specifically, I think as when you start off, if you really, really want to learn as much as you can, then I think consulting is better in this case, because in consulting, you get to try many different projects. You work with many different people in technology. If you're working in like a non-client facing role, you're working with the same people all the time. Maybe like there's a reorg of some sort, or people get hired or fired or laid off or all that, but you're still working with the same people, mostly, if you're in a non-client facing role. But if you're in a client facing role, I think it changes, because it's similar to consulting in that way. With consulting, you're working with different teams, different people in terms of the client side, different stakeholders. Every single project is different timelines. You're sometimes even doing something that you don't actually know. You're challenging yourself constantly. You're really stretching yourself there. With that said, it is harder to ramp up in that way, because you really have to embrace it. If you really want to have that hand holding and you want to have that training and all that, like, easy kind of way of ramping up with the support, then technology might be better in that kind of way. But if you really want to think about it, let's say you want to do both, like, which is kind of like what I was doing. Like, do I want to do tech and consulting, and then or consulting then tech? Consulting was easy for me to just start with first, because I mean, I wanted to kind of like, I treat that as like a boot camp in some way. Consulting is the boot camp, and then technology is like, all right, I'm coasting. I'm going to do what I want to do what I can do, try what I want to do. And then I kind of learn about how it's like being in a technology company. But now that I'm thinking from both perspectives, and I'm also not just talking about my time at Google, I'm talking about my time at working at other technology consulting firms, as well as technology firms. So being in those, personally for me, I think you learn the most, which in my opinion, the definition of a really good entry-level role is, where can I learn the most? It's consulting, because of all the exposures of every single thing you could possibly do. There's so much exposure to a lot of training as well. And I'm thinking about like small and big consulting firms. There's always training, there's always certifications. In tech, small or big, there's not always that either. Like in big tech companies, they might have a lot of training and certifications and workshops out there, but in a smaller startup, you don't really get that. You might get a lot of similar experiences of consulting in a startup in technology, but most people, when they're thinking about going into technology, they're thinking about the big companies like or Meta or Amazon or Google. That's what they're usually thinking of, which is still a good program to be in when you're starting off. But if you really want to learn the most, I still think consulting is best for that. And that doesn't matter if it's a big or small. It's just in general, like the nature of consulting, you will learn a lot. The only thing is, like, if you end up doing like some menial task, like being in a call center, then I know that's not really the ideal. But once you get into a true consulting role where you're really learning and there's so much ambiguity in consulting, you're kind of gonna have to thrive in that. Meanwhile, when it comes to technology, I will say there is a certain area, there's like a certain ceiling in consulting. Like, let's say, for example, for me in Workday Financials, I was doing the same thing at a certain point. My first 2 years was phenomenal, because I learned with different clients, different projects, different industries, and I had to learn everything by myself as an entry level in some ways. Like, I've never touched Workday. I've never worked with clients before in a professional standard. I've worked with clients before in an internship, but not when I'm like literally working on the project, as opposed to like being in the background. Like, you're actually working with the client directly, speaking to them, talking to them, presenting to them, all that kind of stuff. So in that way, I think consulting is better. However, when you hit a ceiling, where maybe like you're known for something now, like you're the go-to for business assets or supplier accounts or procurement, which is what I was essentially at one point. Like, everyone just came to me for those kind of questions, or everyone came to me for those projects. I was like, I don't want that again and again and again. It was the same projects all over the time. And I was like, this is not really that interesting anymore. then I think that's your time to move somewhere else. And it doesn't mean move to completely different fields. It means like maybe go to some different software or different areas within consulting. Then that keeps it a little bit interesting. Or just leave altogether and go to technology. And in that case, I think technology is still like a really good place to learn, because you get to have, like I said, there's many different roles out there. So you can have many different hats. You can wear different responsibilities. You can do so many different responsibilities. I personally think that's easier, because it might not be in your title, it might not be like your role, but you can still do those roles very easily and learn very easily. It's just a matter of you have to be a lot more intentional, and it's not like you have to essentially craft your own career there, while consulting, like by nature, it's going to force you to do that. Just because of the way that like you even have to network for a project. You don't really do that in technology. Like that's essentially your job. Like the work is going to come to you because you have the role. So that's what I have to say. Let me know down below, like, do you disagree? I feel like in some ways, since I've been in both, and especially I was in a technology consulting role. Management consulting could be completely different from what I'm hearing, though. It's like still very similar. Like the nature of consulting is just that different compared to like when you're in like industry. And I'm saying like for technology, I wouldn't say it's like specific to technology. It's like similar to industry, which means that you're working in a company where you're not really client facing. You're still probably working with clients in some ways, but you're not consulting where you're constantly changing like your title, your role, your responsibilities every time based off of like an SOW or a new project. That's what I will say. And let me know down below in the comments, do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you in technology and you're thinking about going to consulting, or are you in consulting going to technology? If I had to say it to myself back then, I will say stick to consulting when I started out and then go to technology, which is exactly what I did. I have no regrets with that. Like back then, like the companies I had in mind was literally Accenture and Google, and I literally got my top two, so I can't complain. So, but like I was always thinking like, what if I did Google first, or what if I did Accenture first? But I do think Accenture was definitely the best fit for me first because of everything I just said. So let me know down below, and see you guys next time. Bye.